Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing really good. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. I'm letting a few other ladies in here, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Charlie, I have to tell you how excited I am to see another girl with the same name as my daughter spelled the same way. She spells it the exact same way. I love it. It's
Mhm.
short for Charlene. And we named her after my mother-in-law. We named her Charlie in honor of her, but we made it a little more modern by just taking out the N. So very cool.
All right. Awesome. Well, first of all, Jamie, thank you for being here tonight. I am excited to hear who you are and, what Echelon is. And I guess that's where we can start. So let's go ahead and let me spotlight you here first before we get started. All right. And then what we'll do is I'll ask you a couple of questions and then we'll get these young ladies in with their questions as well. So I just want to start with tell us who you are, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Jamie Cochran, and I work for a company called Echelon Front. It's a leadership consultancy. So I started with them coming up on 12 years ago. I started kind of in an admin capacity, just helping and building a business. And now today I sit as our chief operating officer. So I sit on our executive team and help run a leadership consultancy that helps businesses and organizations implement leadership training and development within their organization. So I do a lot of things on the operational side in our business, and then the fun side is I get to teach leadership and go out and actually be an instructor on site with companies that we work with and help them learn leadership skills and learn how to apply that within their businesses.
Beautiful, beautiful. So i- if you could simplify that, with Echelon, like for these young women, what does that mean to you? Like, what are you doing inside of this?
What I specifically do is I teach and I instruct leadership principles with organizations, and I run the business side of our company. So anything related to operations in our business, I oversee to ensure that our business is running and functioning properly.
All right. So I like this idea of leadership because that's what we're doing here with these young women is we're building young leaders, right? And I think that this is something you choose to be. I think it's also something you learn to be. But can you take us back to like a defining moment when you realized that leadership wasn't about rank or title or whatever. It was just about, who you were and the example you wanted to be.
Yeah, I probably, if I had to scale it back to like the time that I started to really recognize that thought process, it was definitely around the ages of you young women. As you start to get older, you start to see really good examples of leadership in your life, whether it's through teachers or coaches or people or mentors that you see really good leadership qualities in. And you also get a chance to see bad leadership examples. And you think to yourself, man, that's not the kind of leader that I want to someday be. So it was really back when I was young that I started to see for myself the value of really good leadership. And then here at Echelon Front, it's really solidified for me the belief that leadership is the solution to really every problem that you're facing. So, our core beliefs, and that really ties to what you were mentioning, Whitney. Our core beliefs at Echelon Front is first and foremost that leadership exists at every level. So, everyone's a leader. Any human being who's interacting with other human beings has an opportunity to influence them. And so you're a leader in whatever capacity that might be. We believe that leadership isn't confined to just titles, like titles of leadership or leading people, that you can be a leader at home with your families, you can be a leader in your communities, you can be a leader for yourself. What are the standards that you set for yourself? And then the other two core beliefs is that it's a skill. Leadership is something that can be learned. A lot of people think, well, I'm not comfortable speaking in front of people, or I may not be as charismatic as other people. Those things don't really matter. There's qualities that make people maybe somewhat more adept to taking on leadership roles, but we believe that leadership is a skill and that it's something you can learn and practice. And even the best leaders have more opportunity to grow. And then the last one, that leadership is the solution. So any problems you're facing, you can pare that down to, this is a leadership problem. And if you know that, and you can really focus on, okay, if this is a leadership problem, you can now apply some really cool techniques and tactics to solving those problems.
I really like the idea of knowing that it's a skill, because I think we have this like, oh, well, I'm not the leader of this, so then I never speak up, or it's we kind of get paralyzed in the definition of terms of what a leader is. And I love like the idea of being able to learn and look at all the angles of, hey, if I'm going to show up as a leader inside of my family, this is how I'm going to show up. Or if I'm at school and I want to be a leader, this is how I'm going to show up. And it's really, I think, practicing and the reps of practicing and knowing that we're not going to come in perfect as a leader. We're just going to learn as we go along.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think, especially when I was young, I didn't necessarily think of myself when I was, your age, your guys' age, that I was like a leader. I might have, in some capacities held a leadership role within my school or within my, world. But in other capacities, I didn't actually feel like I was much of a leader. But I think about like the leaders that have really impacted me. It wasn't necessarily my boss or my teacher or my coach. I certainly had those types of leaders who had an impact on me, but oftentimes it was my friends who held me accountable and told me the truth and gave me feedback. It was my family, and I started to realize that I had the capability to be a leader anywhere that I went, even if I wasn't holding a leadership position or leading people. I had the ability to lead in the classroom, to be a leader in my household with my siblings. Now, as a mom, my biggest leadership role is as a mom with my kids. So every capacity you think about your life, there's an opportunity to lead. It's just whether or not you want to take those opportunities, which is really to influence other people for good, right? Like leadership, yes, leaders out there influence for bad. We want to be the kind of leaders that are influencing people to better their lives, to help them, to support them.
Absolutely. And I think there's so many different positions for this. And we just had a conversation last week with these young ladies all about like leadership and who was someone in their life that made a big difference. And it was fun to hear the different people that came up. And it's not who you would expect it would be. And yeah, definitely as a mother, I get that. I'm a mother of 5 kids. So leadership is essential, and I love hearing it come back around of, well, you showed me this, and I learned so much from that. And listen, ladies, having your friends be leaders, are you being that person, is the leader in your group, and knowing that people look up to people who take on that leadership role. I love that.
I had a
So
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Coach. I was gonna ask if you have any. I know it's probably a long process, and it takes a while to kind of implement these things when you're coming to companies and assisting them with this. But could you give us like a maybe a short snippet of something that you would introduce in a company or in any sort of leadership capacity, maybe a small exercise or something that maybe these young ladies could implement in their daily lives, like a small intentional thing to think about when trying to incorporate and change yourself into the leadership role that you want to take on in life.
Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, I have hours of content on this piece of it. This is what I do for this is a
Yeah.
lot of what I get to do. I think as I think about something practical, because there's a lot of things we teach. And listen, like high level at your ages, as you think about what's going to make you successful in life and what's going to put you in a position to be a leader in those capacities, you're going to need to build and maintain really strong relationships. You're going to need to communicate effectively. That's something that you have to learn. That's a skill we have to get better at. You're going to need to learn how to detach from your emotions so you can make good decisions. You can better prioritize and execute on the things that you need to accomplish. And you're going to need to learn how to empower others and support others to lead. So if I were to break this down, if I was teaching these principles, we call those our 4 laws of combat. There's names for them all. I'm not going to go through all of them, but essentially cover and move, simple, prioritize and execute, decentralized command. We teach that as the framework for how leaders can solve problems that they're facing. And for you guys, those are really important things. I teach my kids all the time the value of building relationships, communicating effectively, not making emotional decisions, right? Learning how to separate our emotions sometimes from the decision or action that we're taking. From a practical standpoint, something that I would recommend for especially young leaders to do is implement something we call the read back. And the read back is like, hey, this is a practical thing you can start doing. And think about when you're, maybe a parent or a coach or a teacher gives you information, you start using a read back. This helps to ensure that the person that is giving you information knows that you're listening, that you're paying attention, that you're engaged in it. And the way that works is if Lydia, says, hey, here's what I need you to do, I might stop by after class or after the coach says something and say, hey, real quick, coach, I just want to make sure that I understand what you need of me. Here's the read back. Here's what I heard. Top 3 things, write them down. There's so much value in writing things down. And you read that back to them and say, hey, just want to make sure I'm aligned on what you need from me. And it gives that 2-little-second test where you can ensure that you are understanding what's being asked of you. And it creates that little moment of alignment and shows someone you value what they're asking, that you're listening, you're paying attention. And it sets you apart from other people as like a high performer. Hey, I'm listening and I'm actually acting on this by giving you this read back and sharing with you what I heard to make sure that we're aligned. So I think that would be a practical piece in a slew of a million things that I would probably recommend if we were doing like a whole training session.
Yeah, I love that because it also gives an opportunity for you to build a relationship and for other conversations to come up and connecting with mentors or just the possibility of someone being your mentor, showing you care, and then you can ask them about their day and kind of construct that relationship and keep up with things. So that's really great.
So I was really hoping that you would bring up this read back because I heard you talk about this somewhere else. I don't remember where I saw it. And I was like, man, this is such a good skill for them to learn. And it's something that we teach in our family to our kiddos I have learned as a mother that I can ask you a question and you maybe don't understand really what's happening, but if I can say, hey, can you say back in your own words um, what we just talked about so we can make sure that we're on the same page because it helps us, to kind of even the playing field. So I'm not aggravated when you don't do what I thought I said you were going to do and then vice versa.
Yeah, the read back is an amazing tool. We teach a lot of really practical things at Echelon Front. This is for me one of the biggest, and we're teaching this to companies and organizations, but the read back works everywhere. I use it with my kids as well. And the value is at your age, you have the ability to be the driver of that read back. So if I'm putting out information to my team, like I lead a team of people, I'm asking the read back, but it's a test for me. When I ask my team for a read back, it's not, hey, Lydia, can you give me a read back so I made sure you understood what I was saying? That's not what it's for. The read back is, hey, Lydia, can I get a read back so that I can make sure I communicated properly, that I didn't miss anything of importance. It's a test for me. And it works in the reverse as well. So if a coach is giving me information, if my mom is giving me information or a teacher, that quick opportunity to say, hey, really quick, can I give you a quick read back? I just want to make sure I understand what you need of me. It's a test for you. Hey, I want to make sure I understood what you wanted. And you now give that like quick 1, 2, 3 bullets. That creates a little bit of that sense of alignment. It builds that relationship. It shows that person, again, that you care about what they said. And it's a really effective, it takes 30 seconds. And what's great about that is in rare occasions, you might say, hey, coach, or hey, teacher, or hey, mom, really quick, this is what I heard. And you'll read it back and they'll say, oh, no, actually, I didn't want that. I wanted this other thing. And it gives you that moment so that you don't go off and waste time. And when you get into the career world, this shows your boss or your teammates or your colleagues that you really care about understanding, that you understand what they're asking for, and it's going to build in their confidence in you that you're going to now be able to go execute on that, because it shows them I'm listening, I'm paying attention, and I'm giving myself this little bit of a test to make sure that we're aligned on what you need from me. So it's a huge way to elevate yourself as someone who gets, man, that person's a high performer.
Man, I love that. That makes me so excited to hear that you're putting that out into the universe and that these young ladies can hear that as too. Carolyn, you have a question?
I was just going to add in real quick that on my campus, which Abrielle was there last year, with our littles, we do that and teach them that, but we call it the drive-through
Love
because
it.
it's like at McDonald's. I'm going to place my order. Now you're going to be the drive-through and you're going to read it back to me. So we
Yep.
say, let's do the drive-through. So it's just you can do it with the littlest of kids.
We use that example when we teach this to clients of like, think about when you go to a restaurant and you place an order, how much more confident you feel when the waiter or the waitress reads back your order. When they read that back to you in the drive-thru, in the restaurant, you feel much more confident that they're going to be able to deliver what you're asking for. The same thing works, in any scenario. And with kids, to your point, Whitney, earlier, 100%. I use this with my kids because otherwise it's in one year and out the next. So we definitely use the readback as a way to make sure we're both aligned, and also so that I make sure I didn't miss anything, because it's really easy with mom brain going crazy sometimes to forget things. And it's a great way to ensure that both sides really understand what we're trying to accomplish together.
Love it. Working as a team. I love that. Oh, Caroline, the drive-through.
It's
So
perfect. It works. It works really good for littles. It connects to them exactly what it is you're asking them to do when sometimes they can't think abstractly.
Love it.
exactly. So what were some of the challenges that you had when you faced stepping into a leadership role, and how did you learn to just own your place in the room?
Yeah, I think when I was young, some of the challenges or mistakes I made, certainly letting my emotions or my ego get in the way. I think it's really easy for us. Our tendency as human beings is to let our emotions or our ego or our own opinions and perspectives sort of prevent us from seeing the truth of a situation. So when we are overwhelmed with emotion, when we've got a lot of things going on, or stress or chaos, or those things are happening, and we're not able to detach from our emotions, we tend to make really bad decisions. And so early on, as I think about early in my career, what made me like had to learn quickly that, like, man, I'm making a mistake here, or this didn't happen, or I didn't feel confident in this. In almost all those scenarios, it was because I was wrapped up in my own emotion or my own ego. And when I've learned as I've gotten older to detach from those things and recognizing that the emotion and the ego, which is good. Hey, our ego pushes us to want to succeed and want to win, but not when it convinces us, hey, you're right, this other person's wrong. Not when we allow it to sort of infiltrate how we feel about others and ourselves or impact our decision making. We have to detach from those things if we're going to make good decisions. So we can feel sad, we can feel angry, we can feel stressed, we can feel overwhelmed, we can feel all of those emotions, but we can't make decisions when we're in that phase. We can't go make a decision or say something or call someone or do any actions with those emotions, because we're liable to make bad decisions. And every mistake I made as early in my career was based on me making those decisions as a leader. And then the other side of that was just allowing myself to make excuses. Our tendency as humans, in addition to sort of listening to our emotions and letting those dictate our decisions, is to get wrapped up in the excuses and the finger pointing that is really common. And if you did an audit of like all the times in a day you make these little excuses, you'd quickly realize that every time you make an excuse or you blame someone else, or you make something or someone else the problem, you give up your control to actually solve the problem. So for me, it was learning how to control my emotions so I can make good decisions, and recognizing that if I wanted to control the outcome of my life and what I was dealing with in the moment, I had to take ownership of that, and I couldn't make an excuse or give up my control for how I was going to solve that problem.
What were some of the things that you did to control your emotions? Because I think we use that word control, but when we're in the moment of you're angry and you just want to lash out, or I mean, everybody on this screen right now can relate with, there was a time where we were super emotional and we overreacted towards someone or something. What are some techniques that you put in place that you could say, hey, I'm really emotional right now and I need to pull back before I make any decisions?
Yeah, so we teach something called detachment at Echelon Front. And really what we're looking to do is we have to get really good at kind of knowing when we're getting emotional. And emotions are a good thing. Hey, listen, emotions tell us something's important, something's wrong. I feel a certain way. I'm not saying that we don't feel those emotions. We're not saying that at Echelon Front. What we're saying is don't make decisions there. So recognize the emotion, feel it, go cry if you need to, scream in a pillow, do whatever you need to do. The emotion is going to exist, but don't stay there. Learn how to detach from that situation. So that could be taking a step back, taking a deep breath. That could be like removing yourself from a scenario. I think it's totally fine in heated conversations to say, like, hey, you know what? I'm feeling really emotional right now. I need to take a break from this conversation and come back to it, right? Like, it's okay to have control in that way. A really good example. So I have a 12-year-old daughter, and she would go to school, and she is, school takes a lot out of you, especially if you're coming home, you're a little mentally and physically drained from the day. And she would come home, and you could feel it, you could sense it from her. This emotion was rising, and so for her, I was like, all right, Charlie, you got to figure out how to have an action plan to detach when you feel this way. So we wrote on her mirror her 3-step action plan. And for her, that was take a nap, right? That helps sometimes if we just get a 15-minute power nap. The second one, if that didn't work or she didn't feel like taking a nap, was to eat a snack, because who doesn't feel better when you eat a snack? And then the third one was to jump on the trampoline. And she came up with the action plan. So each of you have to know for yourself what helps in those situations. And it might be like testing and trialing it, like that helped, that didn't. But for her, it was an action plan. So when she felt emotional, I could point her to her action plan and say, hey, you got to detach. And those 3 things allowed her to, I'm going to take a nap, I'm going to take a break, I'm going to eat something, I'm going to go jump on the trampoline, and now I can get back to the situation without all the emotion attached to it. That was her way of detaching. So I think for all of us, we have to recognize when those emotions are rising and have something in place. Hey, I'm going to give myself an hour break before I come back to this conversation. I'm going to write out how I feel and be really angry in this notebook, but I'm not going to say this to that person because it's not likely going to have a good outcome. Whatever it is you need to do, learn how to detach from your emotions so that you don't make bad decisions when you're in that emotional state.
So what I just heard from that is learn how to detach. We're not stuffing the emotion. We're not forgetting about the emotion. The emotion is really real. It's happening. It's happening for a reason, and it's us processing it in our own way so that we're not spewing that out at someone else. And that looks different for every single person. I love like even jumping on the trampoline. I'm like, maybe I need to go jump on the trampoline. Mine is go for a run.
But yeah, for everyone it's different. And I think the idea of detachment is what we're looking at here. The emotions exist. And I tell my daughter all the time, like, hey, we can't make this, like crying doesn't solve the problem. Crying is a fine emotion. It's a fine reaction to feeling a certain way. But in this moment, we have to solve a problem. We have to make a decision. And crying in this moment isn't going to solve that problem. So that's the detachment piece. Hey, we're going to put this on pause. We're going to get ourselves together. We're going to make a decision, and we can feel the emotion and sit with it, at a time when we have the room to actually feel it and work through it. In those moments where we have to make decisions, we have to figure out how to detach from it long enough to make a decision.
I love it. All right, let's get Gianna in here.
I can really relate to that because my dad has a lot of projects currently sitting out in the driveway, and he likes to have help from his kids because we're like free help all the time because we live in his house. And a lot of times, what happens is we're like in a high stress situation where we might be like putting an engine in a van with a tractor, and someone's fingers could get smashed off. And of course, I'm the one who's driving it because I'm the only one home, and it gets really high stress, and we get mad at each other, and then he yells at me to stop hitting myself when I'm mad at myself, and it all ends well. But my thing is in that kind of situation where it's like super high stress and you can't just like back away, and I feel like I'm having people always tell me, don't bottle your emotions, that'll only end in outbursts, but then don't like show up and let them out all at the same time when I'm putting an engine in a van? Like, what is your kind of viewpoint on that?
Yeah, that's a great example. And it's Gianna. Yeah, that's a great example where, like, hey, we have a day, we come out, we're being asked to do something, there's heightened emotion, your dad's probably stressed. There's a little piece here I'll tell to all of you guys. It's like, let's give each other, our friends, our family, a little bit of grace, right? Sometimes I react in a way that I don't mean to because I've had a long day. Now, I'm really good, or I try really hard to like take ownership when I say something or I snap at my kids, but sometimes I just need a little bit of grace too. And we can give each other some of that grace. So in those moments, Gianna, I think, what can you control of that situation? Hey, my response, listen, sometimes I tell my son, like, hey, I need you to do this. And his response to me is that, like, that little attitude, that little stress, I can feel it. The emotions are there. And if he were to control that and respond to me, I would be able to control mine too. And it's not to say that you, as the kid in this scenario, should manage that environment, but you'd be surprised at how much you can control, how much bigger that situation comes if your response is cool, calm, collected. So in those moments, like in this situation, I might recommend that you just communicate, hey, dad, I need a few minutes before I get out there and help you with this. I need to get my mind right. Can I get like 15 and I'll come out and help you? Or if you're in the moment and you've got to be doing something and it's stressful and you can't walk away, you can't take a minute to detach, just doing your best. There is like psychologically science done to prove the value of even just a deep breath. Like literally a deep breath can change your heart rate, can change all the cortisol levels in your body that's creating that stress for you. Even just a couple deep breaths. So even in that moment, before I respond, I might, okay, dad, what do you want me to do? And you'd be amazed at how much more you can control it if you just even take that moment to detach with taking a breath. So it doesn't have to be these big ways we detach, even the small ways of taking a step back in a conversation. Sometimes that's very helpful if I'm having a heated conversation with someone. Even just taking one step back and giving myself a little bit of space creates a little bit of that detachment, helps me feel a little more in control. So find little ways like that you can control in the moment. Deep breath, little bit of distance, take a step back, really collect yourself, and then think about the way you're responding. And really, if you focus on responding calmly, you're likely to bring that out in other people as well, or at least feel more in control. Even if the other person isn't doing that, you feel more in control, which is so much more valuable.
That really helps, and thank you so much for that.
But I agree with you, Jana. Don't bottle your emotions. Just don't let them flourish all the time when you're trying to make decisions. It's not going to help you. Find a place to give it the right kind of release for those emotions. But in the moment, we got to make decisions. We got to get things going. We can't get tripped up on the emotions that we're feeling. So I think that's a good balance there that we need to have.
Yeah.
So let's say, Gianna, I have this question because this happens in my family. And so I want to know the answer to this. So Gianna, you're in this situation with your dad. It's a high stress situation and you don't show up the way that you're like, oh gosh, I just got taught this, but it didn't show up this way. And it was a mess. I was like super emotional or whatever. How do you repair that after? Like, do you have a conversation with the person to say, hey, like, how do you do some work so that you don't show up again like that?
Yeah, it's so much easier than we would think. And what makes it hard is that our ego doesn't like it, because our ego, we have to kind of put it in check. So if I, hey, my kid's doing something and I snap at him, right? I don't want to do that. That's not the kind of relationship I want to have, but it happens. You're going to snap at your dad. You're going to have those little moments. Trust me, I got a 16-year-old who likes to throw me attitude sometimes. The difference is how we respond afterwards. I think people are generally really forgiving that, like, hey, you guys are teenagers. Guess what? You're going to have a bad day. And guess what? Sometimes you're going to say something that you don't mean. And guess what? As a mom, sometimes I'm stressed and I got a lot of things going on. I'm going to react in a way that isn't what I want in that moment. It's not what I want. It's just how I reacted because of whatever. I didn't detach properly. So when that happens, it's literally as simple as, once I am detached, once I've come down from that moment, going to that person and saying, hey, listen, Gianna, I didn't mean to react that way earlier. I had an attitude. I shouldn't have done that. I reacted emotionally. I'm going to do a better job to try to control it next time. Right? You just take ownership of it. It's so easy. And I'm telling you, if you do that with your leadership or your teachers, your coaches, your friends, your dad, it'll have a massive impact. When my son takes ownership in those moments, I'm detached now. When he says, "Hey, I shouldn't have reacted that way," I go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so forgiving." People are generally forgiving. They want to be forgiving of each other. And all it takes is us putting our pride aside a little bit, our ego, and saying, "Hey, I screwed that up. I said something I didn't mean to say. I was a little stressed out in the moment. I hope you can forgive me." Right? Like, it's very easy to simply fix that, as long as we try next time to do a little bit better of a job. And we're going to fail a million times over. But if we fail and take ownership, over time, people are really willing to be forgiving and give us a lot of grace.
Love it. All right, let's go ahead and get Lucy in here.
Okay, my question is, what are some ways that I can grow and develop as a leader? Like, how can I continue to become a better leader or something?
I love it. Look for opportunities. And I think if you look for opportunities, you'll find more opportunities than you would even imagine. So, as a friend, you're a leader as a friend. You're a leader because hopefully you're helping your friends make good decisions. You're influencing them for the better. You're holding them accountable. Hey, you know what? If they're talking about someone, for example, you could be a leader to be like, "Hey guys, let's not talk about that person. They might be going through a rough time," and refocusing the conversation. You have a million opportunities in your day to be a leader, whether it's at home with your family. A leader looks around and sees a need and fills a need. Hey, you know what? My mom didn't ask me to take the trash out, but I'm going to go take it out because I see a need. I'm going to go fill a need. That's what leaders do. They step up and they do the work. They perform at a high level. So I think just looking for those opportunities, and then obviously there's more traditional ways. So if you get opportunities where they're asking someone to step up and lead something, throw your name in the hat. Maybe you don't get it the first time, but over time you'll get more confident to take on more traditional leadership roles. But start looking at the world through more of this lens of, I can be a leader in any capacity. There's a saying that our CEO says all the time, and I think for me it captures what leadership is really about. And it's do the right things for the right reasons and you will win in the end. And I think leaders do the right things and they do it for the right reasons. And the right reasons means to help other people, not for ourselves. This isn't self-serving. I'm not doing this so that I get a leg up or I benefit in this way. I'm doing these things to help the people around me. And if you do that, you make good decisions and you do it for the right reasons, you're going to win. You're going to find those opportunities. And I'm a big believer that, like, good things come to people who put good out in the world.
I love it. Great question. All right, let's go with you, Sarah.
I was just wondering how, like, to be a leader if you're, like, scared of what people think or, like, social anxiety, like, how should you get around that?
Sarah, that's a great question. And I'm just going to tell all of you ladies, in no world will everyone like you. You got to get used to that idea. Not everyone is going to like you, and that's okay. The older you get, the more comfortable you get with that. But there's so much value at your guys' age to realize that not everyone's going to like you. But if, again, you're doing the right things, you're doing them for the right reasons, you feel good about yourself and those decisions that you're making, then you're going to find the people that are going to celebrate that with you and champion that and be supportive of you. And for the people that don't, you've got to learn how to sort of separate, going back to that detaching from that feedback. The other thing that I would tell leaders, and not just, young leaders like you, but seasoned leaders, is that there's value in feedback. So as opposed to looking at feedback as this negative thing, like, I got this feedback, I don't like it, we look at it as, oh, this feedback I'm getting is a gift. It's information I didn't have before. I may not like it. It may sting to get this feedback, but it's information. It's information that I get to choose what I do with that. Some of that feedback is, oh, that's good feedback for me. I'm going to adjust a little bit on how I do this thing. Other feedback is, I don't know if I agree with that, but it's still good information, and I'm going to categorize it away, and I'm going to move forward with what I feel strongly. And over time, I think, Sarah, what you're also mentioning is like building confidence. And over time, if you don't worry so much about what other people think, you'll start to see that you find little niches of where you can add value, and that will help in building your confidence. Strong leaders don't have to be these big social, you mentioned, hey, I have a little bit of social anxiety. That's totally fine. That's something you build over time. That's also a skill that you get more comfortable with. And I've seen leaders that are not necessarily as, I think I'm a pretty outgoing person. I can get up in front of a big stage and talk to people. I'm comfortable with that. Some of the best leaders I know, they don't do that at all. That's very outside of their comfort zone. But what they do is they focus on the people that within their sphere of control. They're people within their circle, and they really focus on small ways that they can impact those people's lives. It doesn't have to be in these big boisterous ways. It can be in small little ways that you impact people around you. And that will build in your confidence. And over time, you'll find that it doesn't really matter what people think of you. It's what you think about you, and what the people around you that care about you and really value you as a person, what they think about you. That's really what matters in the end. And all the drama that happens usually around your guys' age will go out the window at some point, because you realize, man, the person that doesn't like me or said this thing about me or had something negative to say, they're not really my friend, and they don't really care about my success. And I'm going to focus on the people that do. And I would bet, Sarah, you have people in your life that are big champions of you and believe in you. I would focus on their feedback and not the feedback from others.
Good question. Man, I what you just said about, there's different kinds of leaders too. And I think we fall in this comparison trap, because you just said, I'm this really outgoing person and I can be on stages and, and you're all over social media. I am not that kind of leader. It terrifies me to get up on a stage. I love leading from this aspect. I love being in groups like this. And I would say, I am a leader. Like I love leading. But I think, even at my age, I can get into this comparison trap of, well, to be a leader, I should be doing this, 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 this. And the truth is, you're a leader if you choose to be. And I think sometimes we question that, because we're in a world filled with, social media where we can compare ourselves to everyone.
What's the saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. If you spend your life comparing yourself to other people, you are going to constantly be sad. You're going to constantly feel not enough. Inadequate is probably a better word. One of the things we teach leaders is that there's really no growth for yourself in your comfort zone. So part of the growth is outside of the comfort zone. So part of growing in your guys's, path of life right now is to figure out ways to get a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Hey, maybe I'm not ready to go get up in front of on stage and sing a song at the school talent show, but maybe I'm going to get outside of my comfort zone by raising my hand to read in class. Right? Like maybe it's one little step. Figure out the things that you want to get better at, and then find some ways to get outside of your comfort zone to actually push you towards that opportunity. It doesn't have to be all at once. I wasn't, if you had asked me 15 years ago if I would be an instructor that does keynotes and all these things, there's no way. I would have never guessed that that was something that I was going to do or that I was capable of doing. That took small little opportunities where I started to feel a little more comfortable, a little more confident, got outside my comfort zone. And over time, I was able to build that skill. It's not something you have to have all at the same time. And don't get caught up on the comparison thing. You're always going to feel inadequate if you do that. I promise you. Focus on your own strengths and your own abilities, and how you can grow those things. And don't rob yourself of that by looking at what other people are doing and assuming you need to be like them.
Love it. Lydia.
Yeah, so I had a question about bad leaders. I don't know if we could necessarily even call them leaders, but there are a lot of people, especially when you're a teenager, in positions of authority, and maybe you don't like the way that they talk about other people or just how they're tackling life in general. So can you just talk a little bit about how to appropriately approach people that may be older than you, or a coach of some sort that is approaching things in a way that you don't agree with, and how to politely navigate those types of situations.
Yeah, so a couple things. The first thing I would say about the bad leadership examples in your life is take note. Take note of what you don't like and what you see them doing that you think is not effective as a leader. And the reason being is some of the best examples that I learned growing up of the kind of leader that I wanted to be came from the bad examples, came from having bosses or leaders that I didn't respect, that I couldn't really look up to, that I questioned some of their, moral compass. And it helped me refine for myself, like, that I don't want to be like that. I want to be very cautious that I am mindful for how I talk about my colleagues around other people. Because I had that same example where I had a leader who always was bad mouthing other people. And I thought, that is so disrespectful. I don't want to be that kind of leader. So take note and just for yourself know, like, okay, this is an example of what I don't want to be. And then as far as how to manage yourself with those individuals, there's a tactic we teach called play to their ego. And the way that works is usually someone that is in those leadership roles that has these qualities we may not like, it's usually fueled by ego. So someone who's got this big ego, I know what's right, I know what's best, and they sort of, that's usually the example that we see. And so the way I might approach that is, being really mindful of my tone when I ask questions. There's a big difference between like, well, why are we doing that? And hey, can you explain why we're doing that so I can understand how to best support, right? Those are two different things. Same basic words, but very two different outcomes. So the tone I use, I'm going to be really thoughtful for not having that little tone of insincerity or tone of disrespect. In a situation like that, you want to be really careful you're not showing disrespect to this person, because usually that only flares up that kind of reaction. So I'm going to be mindful of my tone. Again, I'm focused on the things I can control. You can't control other people. What I can control is my tone, how I talk to that person, the questions that I ask, and what I can control is my own ego by sort of playing to their, like, hey, you've been in this role for a long time. I'm really confused on this piece. Can you walk me through it? Or, hey, I'm not really sure I understand why we're making this decision. Can you give me some insight that you have that maybe I'm missing? All those little tactics of like the tone and the types of questions I'm asking really are focusing on the things that I can control in that interaction, and then just being prepared for the fact that it may not work. And you may just get that bad leader that makes a decision and you may have to just manage it. We all have those teachers we love, and then we have teachers that, in my history where I was like, oh, that teacher was always hard, always difficult to manage. You're just going to have people like that in your life. So being mindful that, okay, cool, I don't think I'm going to have much progress here, but it's not going to prevent me from, again, controlling what I can control in this situation.
Yeah, I love that perspective of being able to control yourself and not trying to micromanage the other person, and you really can't change other people. So I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yep.
I love it. We cannot control other people. And as soon as we realize that, I think that's been something like over the course of my many years is like, yeah, I just have to remind myself of that constantly. I am not in control of another human being, but I can control how I show up.
Yep.
Caroline, you had something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, obviously, we know that you work with and represent an incredible leadership team. And part of Apogee is we're always learning. We never stop learning. So with you being at like the top in my arena, who are you leaning into? Like, how are you growing your leadership and continuing to learn so that these girls can see that you really do never reach the top?
Oh my
Everybody's
God.
always learning.
Never. So two places that I really go to for continued development. One is my leader, Jocko Willink, who's the CEO of our organization. I've worked with him for 12 years. In my mind, he's like the black belt of leadership. And I constantly learn from him. And he has, weekly podcasts he puts out. He's on our team meetings, and I'm constantly listening and taking notes. In fact, if you were to see, I've got pages and pages of notes from, like, these are all from him. Like, these are my little Jocko notebooks. And when he says stuff, I'm writing it down. So I'm a big fan of writing things down. And it helps me keep track of some of the lessons I'm learning. And then honestly, the other place I go for development for myself is in sessions like this, where I get to engage with clients we're working with, or leaders like yourself, or with my own kids, where I see myself make a mistake on what I teach. And I'm like, oh, hold on, you're a leadership instructor and you just did that wrong, right? It's in my own mistakes, or it's with people I get to talk to when I hear their questions or when I hear their thoughts on leadership. It constantly helps me refine my own thoughts of leadership. If I go speak to a client or do a keynote presentation and talk to a bunch of audience members, I get on that plane and in my mind, I'm going through all the little conversations I had, and it helps reinforce what I teach. But then it also helps me think about, oh, you know what? I didn't think about it this way. I didn't, let me unpack that a little bit. So I think it's just always being willing to recognize, like, I'm not an expert at all. I'm just a product of what we teach, and I'm trying every day to get better at it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I love that you spoke to that you're learning through your mistakes, because I think that holds back so many people.
It's
And
the
especially
best way. The mistakes that
yes,
the lessons that I have learned the most every time has come from me making a mistake. Like, so I think for all of you guys, like, you're just going to make mistakes. It's okay. It's totally fine. In fact, that's what it's meant to be for you guys, especially in the next 10 years and the most transitional times in your life. You're going to change so much, and you're meant to make a million mistakes. And I think the point that you're trying to make, Caroline, is like, hey, you make those mistakes and then you just learn from them. That's what it is. All of these things are opportunities for me to learn, for you guys to learn, and to get better.
yeah, because if you're not making mistakes, you're not taking chances. You're not doing hard things.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think if I can recall, and bringing myself back to the years that these ladies are on this call, I was afraid to make those mistakes. I was afraid to fail because, it's like my voice didn't matter. Like that to me, I thought that about myself, and there wasn't a whole lot of confidence because I was like, okay, what if I fail? And what if everybody sees that I'm a failure? And it's something that we are teaching them constantly. And I'm still teaching myself this is if I'm not willing to put myself out there, like Caroline said, if we're not doing hard things, we're not going to fail. And we'll just always be comfortable, and we'll have that cozy little blanket up around our necks, and we'll never put ourselves out and be the leaders that we want to be. And you guys chose to be in this program. You guys are choosing to be leaders, and you're going to make mistakes. And I love what you said about, like, I'm learning from other people, and I'm learning from what I've done. It's iron sharpens iron, right? And that's like one of the best things is learning from others, but then seeing, hey, where did I mess this up? And the next time when I show up in this area, how can I be better?
Yeah, 100%. I think two things I try to remember is, certainly as I parent teens, and for you guys in your teenage years, one is that we always feel alone. We always feel like the mistakes we're making or the things that we're going through are like, we are the only ones that have ever gone through this. And I have to tell I remember even challenges that, like, my son would have, or that I had as a teenager, that feeling of like, no one else is going through this difficulty that I am. And the reality is if you peeled back all the layers of what, the defensive walls that people put up, so many people are actually going through very similar things, differences in how it all plays out. But so many more people are certainly, like, I know it's not fun when your mom or dad, like, I know what you're going through. Like, the reality is they probably do understand it. And yes, they're so far removed from it. They're, these old dinosaurs, they don't know what they're talking about. But there is an element of, like, they've had those life experiences, and most of the time we're not, I'm not showing up all the time telling my kids, like, well, when I was your age, here's the mistake that I made, and I need to do a better job doing that, so that he recognizes the mistakes he's making are actually pretty normal for a teenager. These are normal mistakes, and nothing you do right now in your life is going to make that big of a difference if you're willing to, like, learn from them. Hey, I made this mistake. Okay, cool. Let's move on from it. The other thing that I always remember as a teenager was feeling like this thing right now that I'm focused on, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, feels like everything in this moment. And I certainly see that with my kids too. And when you make a mistake, especially, it feels like everything. It feels all consuming, and we can't always see past it. And the reality is like you get to be our age, and I look back and like I don't remember hardly any of those things at all. If anything, I remember what I learned in those moments, but I can't really pinpoint like the thing or that issue. There's a couple little things I remember here and there, but it really is so small in the grand scheme of things. So if you could somehow, as in your at your age, think about things in a broader sense, you'd realize that like this thing that I'm getting really hung up on probably doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. And it probably doesn't. I think I'm a big believer in phases. Everything is a phase, and maybe it's a day, maybe it's a couple minutes, maybe it's weeks, maybe it's a year. But I think everything's a phase, and it will pass, and it will, the hard phases will come and they will pass just the same if we just give it a little patience, give it a little bit of time.
One of the coolest things as a mother that I've done with my children that they've actually heard me is instead of saying, "Hey, don't talk about your friend behind their back." It's like, "Hey, when I talked about my friend behind their back, this is what happened."
Yep.
And then they go, "Oh gosh, she actually did this and that didn't turn out well for her." And that's been one of the cool experiences as a mom. And this is, look, I'm still learning as a mother, and I have 4 adult children and a 10-year-old, and I'm still messing that up along the way. But being able to, even at your age, guys, when you mess something up, if you have younger siblings, being able to say, "Hey, when I did this, it didn't turn out so well for me." If you can give them the experience and they see what actually happened instead of you just saying, "Hey, don't do this."
Yeah, this goes back to the core of everything we teach. And my friend Christy's on here, and she knows this principle well, this idea of extreme ownership. And that's what everything we teach comes from, is this idea of extreme ownership. And we haven't talked much about that. So I'll leave you kind of with that, that idea. And that is that you, as an individual, as a leader in your life, you're responsible for everything that impacts your life. And that means you're going to make mistakes. You're responsible for those. It means you're going to make some right calls too. You're responsible for those. But if you stop shying away from, again, giving up your control and saying, well, this happened to me because of this thing or this other person, or making the excuses that we are very inclined as humans to make, if you can stop making those excuses, you'd find that it is so much better on the other side when you say, yeah, I screwed that up, and you take ownership of those problems. And the best example I have is that same 12-year-old last year, it might have been 2 years now. She came home and I had asked her about a reading assignment, like a reading log she had to turn in. And she was like, yeah, I got it. I turned it in. And I was like, well, who signed it? And she had mentioned a babysitter had signed it. But your kids, you guys always give a tell. She gave a little tell, and I knew she was lying to me. And I said, hey, Charlie, did you have Emma sign that and you didn't do the reading? And she's an easy break. She started crying immediately. She was caught in this lie. She felt terrible. She had turned in this log. She hadn't done the reading. And I was like, well, hey, you need to take ownership of this with your teacher. And she was mortified that she would have to go in. She's like a teacher's pet. She likes to do everything right, straight A kid. And now she's going to have to go tell her teacher that she lied. And we role played it. We talked about it. This, again, feels all consuming. In her world, this is everything, right? The next day we go in and talk to her teacher, and she takes ownership and says, hey, I turned in this log. I shouldn't have, this is what happened. And she's trying to, not cry. And her teacher, it elevated her respect. She saw Charlie as someone that was going to be a truth teller. And even though she made a mistake, she was willing to work with her on it. And she gave her an opportunity to earn back those points that she had, lied about. And when we left her office, I looked at her and I said, well, how was that? And she goes, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And I thought, that's extreme ownership. It's never as hard as we think it's going to be, It is hard leading into something. It's hard to take ownership or say, I screwed something up, I made a mistake, until we do it. And then we do it and we realize, oh, that was actually pretty easy. That was actually pretty easy to just say, I screwed up, I made a mistake. And to work through now how to solve that problem. You can solve it once you get past the point of like, it was the teacher's fault, it was this person's fault. And instead it's like, hey, this was my fault. I didn't get clarity on what you needed. I didn't understand the deadline. I didn't ask the right questions. And the second you take ownership of those things is the second you get the ability to now go and solve them.
That's so good. So good. Extreme ownership. And this will help you in every area of your life as you go into any relationship you have. And I know we're coming to the end of our hour, Jamie. I really appreciate your time today. And we want to support you as an Apogee family. Where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram, Jamie Lynn Cochran, at Jamie Lynn Cochran, or LinkedIn. I post a lot of cool articles on LinkedIn where I use examples in my life or in clients that we work with. I share a lot of articles there, or short posts on leadership lessons. So on either of those you can find. And then my colleague and I, Leif Babin, who's the president of our company, we started a podcast recently, and it's short, like 20-minute segments, called the Lead Win Podcast. And that's on Spotify or really YouTube, anywhere you look for podcasts.
All right, beautiful. Well, thank you again so much for being here tonight and leading these young women and teaching them about extreme ownership, because I think there's not enough out there. And I'm going to keep them behind for a little debrief, but thanks again.
Cool. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Nice to meet all of you. And when Charlie gets back, tell her, A, I'm excited about her name. And 2, she trains jujitsu even better. Jujitsu, if you guys don't train, consider it. It's an amazing sport and a ton of leadership lessons there too. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.